And good evening, everyone, as we await the final stimulus package to arrive on the floor of the House of Representatives out of the caucus and for a vote. A number of senators are coming out and bashing the hell out of this. We're getting some early signs. We don't have the full text yet of this stimulus package, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, this is not good for working families in America. If you've been watching my show for any length of time, you know how big businesses in Wall Street get rewarded. And we are awaiting in moments Senator Josh Hawley, the Republican from Missouri, who is going to speak on this. Apparently, we've learned he is pissed. He is not happy. Bernie Sanders as well, who were demanding $1,200 stimulus checks as part of this COVID relief package. Early signs now showing us that it's going to be only $600 per working per person and $300 for unemployment benefits. In fact, there's all sorts of trade-offs, like removing things for workers in favor of businesses. We're seeing all sorts of bailouts and slush fund money for businesses and overseas businesses. I mean, this is the kind of crap that's in here. This is the kind of crap that Republicans often decry, and that as a progressive, I decry. Like, why are we funding foreign wars? Why is this crap in this bill? So I'm keeping my eye right now on the Senate floor because Senator Josh Hawley is about to speak, and I want to bring this to you. And apparently he is not happy. Otherwise, he wouldn't be speaking right now about this. A few moments ago, we heard from Senator Bernie Sanders, who had these tweets. He said, during the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, there should not be a trade-off between survival checks that the working class, seniors, children, and the disabled desperately need, and emergency unemployment benefits. In the richest country in the world, we must do both. That's absolutely the case. So again, keeping our eye on the Senate floor right now, and it looks like Senator Josh Hawley is about to speak, and I want to listen in as the senator from Missouri, who had proposed $1,200 stimulus checks along with Bernie Sanders, is taking to the floor. Let's listen.
Mr. President, I rise today to discuss the COVID relief bill that I understand is soon to be brought before the House and then to this floor. I understand that we have finally, at long last, a deal that hopefully will result in real relief for the American people. And there is a piece of good news that I want to be sure to note. And that is that this COVID relief package will contain direct assistance to working people. For every working family in this country that needs it, they will be, under this deal, getting a direct check, just like they did in March. Now, that is a victory, Mr. President. There's no two ways about it, and we should celebrate that victory, not on our own behalf, but for the many people in this nation who desperately need it, and who until just a few days ago could expect nothing at all in the way of direct assistance from this body. And I want to thank those who've worked so hard to make sure that this relief was available and is going to the working people of this country, not least the President of the United States, who has been very clear over and over again that he wants to see direct relief to working families, that it should be the cornerstone of the bill. And of course, I thank Senator Sanders for his strong stand on this issue, and it's been a privilege to work with him on it. So this is good news for working families, good news for working people just before Christmas when they need the help the most. But I have to say that the levels of support that I understand will be offered to working people are hardly adequate, and we should not pretend otherwise, Mr. President. $600 per person, $600 per child. This is a fraction of what was offered to working people in the CARES legislation just a few months ago. Legislation, I might add, that every member of this body voted for. Every member voted for. And now they'll be getting only a portion of that. It all adds up to about $100 billion. And we're told that there just wasn't enough left over. There just wasn't any more available for working people. But yet I noticed, Mr. President, that in the spending bill that we're also going to vote on as part of this package, a bill that costs over $1 trillion, we managed to have found $65 million for salmon recovery in the Pacific, $643 million to carry out international communication activities in the Middle East, $116 million for the Export-Import Bank, $118 million for that sterling example of international leadership, the World Health Organization, that has done more to undermine world health in the last year than I think any international organization in the history of the world. Then there's the so-called bipartisan proposal, which is the basis for the present deal. The bipartisan proposal, which included, I might point out, not a cent in direct relief for working people. Almost $1 trillion in costs, not one penny in direct relief for working people until it was added recently. That proposal included $20 billion for higher education, $20 billion. This going to many universities who have massive endowments worth billions and billions of dollars, most of that built on the backs of taxpayers, I might add. And yet,
outrageous.
We cannot find any further funds to help working people in this country. I cannot help but note, Mr. President, that working people were the last consideration in the draconian shutdowns earlier this year that sent so many of them home, that cost them their jobs, that cost them their wages, that cost them their health care on the job, and they have consistently been the last consideration in COVID relief in this body ever since. And frankly, Mr. President, it's disgraceful, and frankly, it's unacceptable. So the work that we're going to do today, and I hope to see a vote on this floor yet today on this relief, it is a step in the right direction, but it is only a step. And I hope that it will be the beginning, Mr. President, of a better approach, the beginning of actually putting working Americans first, putting their needs, putting their independence, putting their strength, their families, their communities first. That ought to be the economic policy of this nation. That ought to be the economic policy of this body. And I can assure you that is the foundation on which economic recovery will be built. Because it's the working people of this nation who power the American economy. Don't believe anything else. We hear a lot about global capital. We hear about the need to secure the financial markets. Oh, and by the way, the Federal Reserve, we're taking back $430 billion from the Federal Reserve in this piece of legislation. $430 billion from the Federal Reserve, funded to the max. Wall Street funded to the max. Yeah. But I say again, Wall Street, capital, the financial markets, they're not the foundation of this economy. The working people of this nation, the working people of Missouri, the working people of our other states, they are the foundation of this economy. And it is time that they were put first. First for COVID relief, first in our economic policy, first in all that we do. And so I hope, Mr. President, that this effort to get them direct assistance will be the beginning of a larger effort to orient our economic policy and the policy of this nation around the strength and the independence and the needs of our great working Americans. And I want to end by saying thank you to them. Thank you to the working people of Missouri who have endured through this crisis day in and day out, who have gone to work as essential workers, who have taken care of children at home, who have missed shifts at work in order to care for loved ones, who have contributed food to others in need even when they didn't have enough food for themselves, who have gone without in order to see that their children could eat. The people of this country, the working people who have sacrificed again and again and again and have borne the brunt of this pandemic and have continued to show up for their families, for their communities, and for this country, thank you. Thank you for making this country work. Thank you for building this country as we know it. Help is on the way. Help is on the way in this bill, which I hope will become law tonight. But there is much more to do, and I, for one, stand ready to work to do it. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
All right, there's Senator Josh Hawley giving an impassioned speech about how his Republican members of the Senate steal from the poor and give to the rich once again. As he points out, $430 billion in COVID relief taken from the Federal Reserve Fund and doled back out once again to other projects, but not to the working people. We can't give you $1,200 checks like we did back in March. We can only give you $600 stimulus checks. We're getting more details on on this bill. We just confirmed that Pelosi and Schumer have confirmed there will be an eviction moratorium is extended in this emerging deal. The package includes $25 billion for rental assistance, those people who are behind in their pay, and will be able to get caught up in some degree on that. It's also, it's important to note here, too, that the House will embed a 7-day stopgap funding bill in this rule. That will go to the Senate once the rule is adopted in the House. It gives time for the enrollment and the processing of all of these things. The final deal is expected to extend for state and cities to spend unused billions from the CARES Act. So, in fact, state and local will actually get some money. There won't be any direct aid in the bill, but there will be some relief for ailing municipalities. That deadline will be extended for the full year. And they have to then get access to these unused billions that are in the CARES Act in order to try to make up from some of these losses. My understanding is that the people receiving less than $100 in base unemployment will qualify for the extra $300, unlike the White House offer from earlier this summer. That will be in there as well. Senator Bernie Sanders also lashing out at this, of course. I showed you his tweets moments ago, but he is he's starting a live stream right now. So he says over the past 9 months, 651 billionaires in America became over $1 trillion richer. He says we can't $1 trillion for billionaires, one $1,200 check for the rest. That's immoral. And it's not even that large. It's $600 checks. And again, we hopefully will have a vote on this sometime tonight, late tonight, perhaps, although it looks like, according to Senator John Cornyn, who spoke just a few moments ago, if we go through these procedural things, the bill is large. And he says, I want to be able to read this thing. We all want to read it. We haven't had a chance to read it. And so that could take all night. It could take into tomorrow, and they would have to pass an additional stimulus, congressional continuing resolution to keep the government open. Bernie Sanders, right now, I want to see if I can bring his feed in. Speaking on this, he is not on the Senate floor, but he is holding a separate live stream.
Let me just say this. If you look at politics from an historical perspective, one thing you learn is that real change never takes place from the top on down. It's not that the leaders make the changes, that people force the leaders to move in the right direction. Millions of people stood up for civil rights, and then LBJ had to sign a civil rights bill. Workers stood up for workers' rights. Women stood up for women's rights. The gay community stood up for gay rights. We are in a moment when we are seeing at the grassroots level, all across this country, young people saying, you know what? I don't want to have a lower standard of living than my parents. I want my own house. I don't want to be burdened with outrageous student debt. I want to be able to drink clean water and breathe clean air. I want a decent paying job. Yeah, I think healthcare is a human right.
Like, those are ridiculous things. Come on.
I believe in immigration reform and treating people with dignity, no matter where they were born.
This should be a no-brainer in America.
And when millions of people begin to stand up and fight for those principles, for economic justice, that we don't have 500,000 people homeless tonight, that we don't have people working for starvation wages. When people stand up for social justice and an end to bigotry in all of its ugly forms in this country, when people stand up for climate justice. And let me tell you, if we don't get a handle on that issue all over this country and all over this world, we're going to see future generations living on a planet increasingly unhealthy and uninhabitable. But when people stand up, they tell the leaders where to go. Believe me, that is the way it works. So I would say to Stacey, who asked the question, Stacey, we got to organize at the grassroots level. We've got to start electing great candidates like Nekima. She is going to go to Washington and make a difference. She has the guts to take on powerful special interests. And we need a few hundred more Nekimas going into the Congress, and certainly a heck of a lot more going into the United States Senate. And when that happens, man, you're going to see some real changes. For the last 4 years, many of us have been playing on defense. I know Georgia, big into football. Well, all we've been doing is defending ourselves against the guy who's in the White House and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's time for us to get on the offense.
Yes.
To start moving the ball forward. And that's what we've got to do. And with your help in Georgia, that is what we will do. On behalf.
All right, there's Bernie Sanders on a live stream speaking to different constituents and people who are trying to organize at the grassroots level for different congressional candidates in the progressive world. So, you know, when you support this channel, you support progressive issues. If you subscribe to this channel, we cover progressive issues that you're not going to see covered on MSNBC or CNN or any of the other big networks. They don't give a crap because they're run by billionaires. They care about their bottom line and themselves. We don't have any corporate overlords telling us what to say here. So we're just getting more word on what is in this stimulus package. Here is some breaking news I want to bring to you right now. This coming from the Washington Post. Here are some big picture items in this bill. There will be $300 per week in unemployment insurance. There'll be $600 per person checks. $284 billion for PPP programs for the second version of that for businesses. There'll be $82 billion for schools, $27 billion for transit, $25 billion for rental assistance and eviction moratorium extended. There'll be $13 billion for hunger. There'll be vaccine distribution money. We're not sure the exact amount. No more hospital surprise billing legislation will be included in that as well. So people aren't surprised when these things show up on their bills and they have no recourse how to fight them. There'll be $10 billion for childcare. So that is what's in this bill, folks. Again, if you're just joining us, we're waiting for the actual bill to come out of committee, and so that the rest of the Senate and House can actually see what this thing looks like. Once it comes out of the committee in the House, then it will go to the larger floor of the House, where it'll have to go for a vote, then over to the Senate, through their caucus committee, vote, and then from there to the White House for President Trump to may or may not sign it. Put it in his pocket as a pocket veto. If you want more information about the pocket veto scenario, you have to watch my earlier video where we covered this and what the president might do to try to hold this entire thing up. So watch that next video right here and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you back here as soon as we have any more information on this. I'm going to try to take a nap in between all of this, but we are always live every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time right here on our channel. So subscribe and turn on that little bell notification, and we'll bring you the very latest on all of this. Now, get some rest, everyone.